This is 21st century, which is an Asian century, more precisely the Indian century. It is the time for India to show the world that India is one of the most recognizable force of the world, who can take its own foreign policy decision independently. It is also the time to show the world that the Indian foreign policy cannot be influenced by any Western countries or any Asian countries. India has its own foreign policy, and it is well capable of taking its own foreign policy matter on its own hand. So to show the world the iron fist, the Indian government has decided to buy Russian oil at 25 to 27% discount. Now India is looking for an alternative payment system or alternative payment route. So here in this topic we will going to discuss how India will going to buy 3 million barrels from Russia, 3 million oil barrel from Russia. What are or the is alternative payment route India is looking for? Why India should buy this oil? And how the Americans are responding to the India's decision. All this matter will going to be discussed in briefly. After 24th February, Russia was hit by multiple sanctions due to its Ukrainian invasion. Now some biggest Russian banks are not part of global SWIFT banking system. US and the UK put total ban on Russian oil import. Therefore, all their harsh sanctions put Russian economy on the brink of collapse. So Russian government offered Indian government the Russian oil and the gas at 25% to 27% discount on market value. And Russian government also requested Indian government and in Indian private companies to invest more in Russia. They agreed to give Indian government and the private companies to tax cut under the special investment mechanism. When the Russia offered India the discounted oil, then the ball was on the Indian court whether India should buy the Russian oil or not. Because the West, especially the USA, was putting pressure on India not to buy the Russian oil. But at last the India took its bold decision by allowing the Indian Oil Corporation to purchase 3 million barrels of Russian Urals from energy and the commodities trade vital. The Indian Oil Corporation issued a statement that it would acquire the Russian oil on delivery basis in order to avoid any complication related to the insurance and the fixing vessels. These are all huge discounts that have already offered by the Russian authorities. That means the India do not have to wait for any insurance protocol to buy the oil from the Russia. The Russian government is giving the Indian government every opportunity to acquire the Russian oils at a discounted rate. So India is allowed to take the Russian oil at any time they want, anytime India want. So that is why the India has shown their willingness that the India will going to buy 3 million Russian oil barrels from Russia. Now the payment system, which is very important in any business deal. That is why India and Russia are exploring the possibility of using the Chinese yuan as the reference currency to value the rupee and the ruble trade mechanism. The two countries are also looking at the floating rate arrangement because the Russian ruble is losing its value. Losing its value since the Russia invaded the Ukraine. There were so many sanctions on Russia from West and the Western European countries, especially the Americans, put some kind of strictest sanction on Russia. That is why their value, the ruble's value is falling down. As we know, the India-Russia business tie is very low comparisons to the India-US and India-China business ties. India and the Russia total trade volume is only $10 billion. So to boost business, especially in oil and the gas, because the India is third largest oil importer and India is working to resolve some key issues. The availability of ships and the insurance cover for the imports and the oil blends given the configuration on Indian refineries. This assumes the importance given the Western sanction on Russia and PJSC Rosneft oil stating that the Indian companies can acquire the stake in Russian projects and purchase the Russian crude oil. That is why some state-sponsored Indian companies and some companies, those who are in private sector, they are also trying to acquire some of the Russian oil, purchase a stake. So that will going to help the Indian economy to boost in this kind of inflationary situation. India is also looking for India-Iran oil trade when the US sanctions were there on Iran. The India opens a bank account in UCO Bank with the help of RBI. Iran also opened a bank account on UCO Bank too. India used to pay them on rupee value, and the Iran spent that money to purchase the goods from the Indian market. So it worked in the India's benefit. If someone is buying from the Indian market, then the Indian businessmen are profiting out of that businesses. That is why this is the time for the India to planning for a similar kind of approaches. And India is approaching this kind of things for purchasing for the oil to the Russian organizations or the Russian government. Incidentally, the rupee and the ruble mechanisms with Russia has been attempted earlier on a small scale for a few items such as tea. This kind of payment mechanism will benefit India. The local currency trade mechanism is key to resuming trade with Moscow, and the India buys lot of defense and the nuclear products from Russia, while India export pharmaceutical, engineering and the agricultural items to the Russia. So it is very, very necessary for the India to build such kind of systems with Russia, and RBI, Reserve Bank of India, also is in talk with such kind of banks of India, and they are also in talk with the UCO Bank that whether this kind of transaction is possible or not. Now we will going to discuss why India is supporting Russia economically and morally. And India have to do it because Russia is not just our trusted ally, they are our friend too. Because Russia not only helped us during 1971 Indo-Pakistan war to liberate Bangladesh, they reached another world war to stand against US and UK. In 1971, no country was standing in the favor of India. They were all against India, especially the West and the USA were standing against India. The West was supporting an autocratic ruler, being a champion of democracy. On the other hand, Russia being an authoritarian nation, they were totally supporting a democratic country, India. If the Russia would not be there for us, then the today's South Asia's geopolitical scenario would be totally different. Now it is the payback time for India. India have to support the Russian economically. And that doesn't mean that India is standing in the favor of the Ukrainian invasion. India is standing against the Ukrainian invasion of Russia. India is against the invasion. That is why the India sent humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. India sent some of the pharmaceutical things to Ukraine to help the Ukrainian authorities. That also does not mean that India put its own economy in jeopardy. And India's defense systems is all these defense systems came from Russia. India cannot risk to sacrifice all those defense systems. In India will going to sacrifice all those things, then India have to relocate all the things. Who will going to help? The West. If we will going to design all the things according to the West, then it will going to cost India the trillions of dollars. And it is not possible for India to do so because it is an inflationary time. After COVID-19, the situation is very, very worse. So that is why India cannot cost it. So India have to go for the Russia to upgrade its defense system. And now India need the cheap oil to get out from this inflationary system. Now falsely calculated Western policies, especially the US foreign policy, cost this world another war. Now the world is in total mess. The crude oil price touched its zenith. The Brent crude oil per barrel price touched $139 per barrel, which is very, very costly. So to save the Indian economy, India have to do it. Because the India know that she is standing alone in this world. No one have their back or have our back except Russia. The world witnessed the Ukrainian invasion. When the Ukraine needed the West most, then the US and the NATO put their step back, and only condemnations won't save any country's future. So doing the condemnations, not involving them directly, that will not going to save the Ukraine. So Ukraine needs military support, the direct military support from the US and the NATO. When the time was ripe for them to help the Ukraine, then they pull back. Why they pull back? Because they were not interested to engage Russia engage Russia militarily, because Russia is a powerhouse. Russia have the nuclear weapons. Russia have almost 6,225 nuclear weapons, which is the highest nuclear weapon numbers that any country ever have in this world. So USA pull their step back, the European Union pull their step back. Now they are helping Ukraine morally and helping them by sending them the aid. That will not going to save the Ukraine. The only thing can save the Ukraine if USA and the NATO countries get involved directly to push back the Russia within its territory. Obviously, the India's decision of purchasing the Russian oil made the US and the European allies so upset that they are now threatening India that they will going to use the severe sanctions like they use against Russia. They actually used this kind of sanctions when India tested the 1998 Pokhran nuclear test. But the USA had quietly removed most of the civilian sanctions by the end of the 1999. And by the end of the 2001, all defense sanctions against India were abolished too. So India can bear the burden of the sanction according to the history. If India can survive that time, then India can survive this time too. Because India is a powerful economical house, and the USA knows that if the sanctions will put on India, then their companies, their private companies will going to bear the losses. Their private companies will go bankrupt because so many private companies, the Microsoft, Amazon, Apple has invested billions of dollars in India. If India will come under the sanctions, then these companies will come under the sanctions of India too. Indian government will not go for the solo ride. They will going to have something from the Indian government. Then these companies, what these companies will going to do? Then they will going to push the Russian US government that to pull out India of these kind of sanctions, because that will not going to help the US economy. There are so many Western so-called liberal journalists. They call themselves liberals. And those liberal journalists, those who are living in the democratic country, those who are threatening India, which is also a democratic country, of several sanctions. They are threatening Indian government that they should not buy the Russian oil. For example, the journalist called the Trisha Regan tweeted that, and the quote is, if the India buys the Russian crude oil, India should expect to be sanctioned by United States. And believe me, that won't work out so well for India's economy. Right now you are with US or you are against US. Simple. So she is saying that if we are not with the US or India is not with US, then the USA will going to put us on sanction. Then put us on sanction. Not only these so-called liberal journalists, there are so many other liberals, those who are threatening India that if China invaded India, then who will going to save us? Who will going to save India? So for their kind informations, I have to say that when the China tried to invade India, then the Russia gave us MiG-29 and S-400 missile system. Even the French government helped India. French government helped us. But where was the USA then? Where was the USA at that time? USA was condemning the China's invasion. So to condemn the simple matter is not going to solve the things. As the world came to know, the US President Joe Biden is the most unsuccessful or most failed president in the history of the USA. These are not my words. These are the words of the popular so-called liberal journalists, those who run the media houses of the USA. First, the Biden messed up in Afghanistan, then Ukraine, now Iran. The Biden, to placate its own people, tried to deal with Venezuela for the oil. The country USA always considered as dangerous communist state. And now they have agreed to deal with Venezuela for their own sake. If Venezuela can be considered as a safe place to purchase the oil, then Russia is the safe place for India to purchase the oil too. The India totally stand with its own belief and have to respect its decision without being bogged down because the USA or the other European countries putting the pressure on India. So India have to believe its own democracy. India have to believe its own people to take its own decision. Then the India will going to save India. No one else will going to come and save India out of its own mess. And we have saw this kind of example recently. The Afghanistan, the USA ruled for 20 years. And what they did? They left the Afghanistan on the hands of the same people they were fighting against. Ukraine, they were supporting Ukraine before the invasion. But when the invasion happened, then they flew away. Now the Iran has bombarded some of the American installment in Iraq. So these kind of things will going to happen. Geopolitics is a very critical thing. India have to do what India needed to do. Now the question part. The first question is, which country has rolled out large denomination banknotes due to the hyperinflation? The first option is Iran, second is Venezuela, third is Sudan, fourth is Iraq. The second question is, which country has hosted a peace conference for Afghanistan recently? The first option is China, second is Russia, third is India, fourth is USA. If anyone have any questions or any doubt about this topic or any other topic I have already uploaded, then please mail me to my email address, which is tuhin.power.academy@gmail.com. Thank you very much. Thank you for your support.